Alrighty, everybody, welcome to our brown bag webinar. I am so excited today to be joined by the co-founders of AdAstra Sustainability and the key architects behind Orbae. Orbae is an open data platform developed by the team at AdAstra, and it brings high-resolution, transparent, and science-aligned land use change emissions data to the public. It has the potential to significantly improve how we assess product and corporate footprints, something we're eager to hear about today, and I'm excited to integrate into our own consulting work at Earthshift Global. Simon is the co-founder and chief product officer at AdAstra and an expert in climate strategy and agricultural supply chains. He's been working in this space for over 15 years and is a lead contributor to the GHG Protocol's land sector and removals guidance, and holds a MSc from ETH Zurich. And Xavier is the co-founder and CEO at AdAstra and is a seasoned LCA and environmental footprint expert. He's helped some of the world's largest food and ag companies navigate their supply chain impacts and holds an MSc from EPFL. I'm going to hand it over to our two presenters.
Thank you, Tess. I hope my connection is good enough. It's a bit edgy right now. Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Tess, and thank you, the Earthshift team, for hosting us today. It's a pleasure to be here online. Both Simon and I are calling in from Switzerland, so it's a bit late in the day, but I guess you're all having your brown bag with you, and hope you have a good lunch and a good time for the next hour or so. So let's get started. What we are going to introduce to you today is the result of our work at AdAstra. It's called Orbae. You'll hear everything about it. It's about land use change and how to assess land use change in LCA. And I think we'll get started immediately. So this is us. We've been introduced already. There's a third co-founder at AdAstra with us, Jürgen Reinhard, who's also, like us, a former consultant from Qantas. And we started that company at AdAstra here in Switzerland 3 years ago with a vision which was to bring better insights, more actionable information and data to support food supply chains to decarbonize and to act to protect natural ecosystems. This was the ambition. And over the course of the last 3 years, we had a chance to develop a technology that is today unique in addressing land use change, which is a very important topic, as you will find out if this is new to you. So what are we effectively talking about today? It's this. This is a picture of deforestation in the Amazon. There's today 500 trees being cut down every second. So this is the rate at which we're still deforesting Earth today. It's a very important issue. It's a very material one from a climate perspective, from a biodiversity standpoint, and one that is very poorly measured and quantified in typical accounting schemes and practices today. And there are reasons for that. But we decided to engage in that journey because there's an international commitment to keep global warming beyond 1.5 degrees. There was a recent study just a few weeks ago saying that we won't achieve that target, unfortunately. Nevertheless, it has been stated by the IPCC that in order to achieve that target, if we want to have any chance, we need to stop land conversion by 2030. 2030 is just around the corner. This is the urgency that we're navigating in. And our goal is to empower a variety of stakeholders across the supply chains to reach that target, stopping land conversion. It happens that 3/4 of land conversion in the world is driven by the expansion of agriculture. So this is the topic we're delineating and looking at. There are other drivers of deforestation and land conversion, such as urbanization or further production of energy, but agriculture is by far the major driver and one that is still very poorly understood. We're taking here the perspective of food companies, or you could say any company that is dependent on agricultural supply chains. Many of these companies have made public commitments to eliminate land conversion in their supply chains and to reduce, to decarbonize their Scope 3 emissions. However, the reality of food systems, of agricultural commodity, of the agricultural commodity market, is that traceability is today a major challenge for those who are buying, trading, processing products that are derived from agriculture in the first place. So there are a lot of initiatives ongoing between food processors and growers in the world, in particular supply chains like coffee, like cocoa, palm sometimes, to empower farmers to protect their land, to get started with regenerative agricultural practices. This remains the exception. It's really important for everybody to understand that the vast majority of agricultural commodities being bought and processed worldwide are commoditized. And for those, there is no traceability. And that challenge we intend to bypass with our solution. We're not going to solve that traceability challenge tomorrow. It's great to work on getting better traceability in supply chains, but in the absence of traceability, we still need to act. We still need to empower the right decisions and the right actions by all of those stakeholders. And I'd like to take an example, just illustrate the problem or the challenge that we're facing. If you're a food company, and you're sourcing probably hundreds, if not thousands of different ingredients in variety of forms. There can be proteins, vegetable oils, sugar, sweeteners. They can also be agricultural products hidden in behind fuels, bioplastics, pulp and paper packaging, and so on. So basically, agriculture is all over the place. It's generally really far away in the supply chain, and it's a very complex web. Now, most companies have already run a first or a series of corporate carbon footprints. And if you take the average food company, this corporate carbon footprint reaches about 10 million tons of CO2 per year. It can be much higher than this for the biggest corporations, but on average, you could say something like that. And looking at corporate footprints for numerous food companies, Scope 1 and 2 in total account for maybe maximum of 15–20% of total emissions. And the vast majority of emissions come from the Scope 3. Scope 3 is supplies, and it's downstream emissions. Out of this Scope 3, in general, on average, in food companies, about half of this is linked to land conversion. It can be more, it can be less, depending on the sector, but it's a very, very material issue. Now take a bit of a different perspective. What's the data that is being used today for these types of assessments? And that's equally valid for product footprints, but here we're taking the example of corporate footprints. In general, companies will do some effort in collecting primary data, and again, that can reach as much as 20% of all of the data that's being used to model the carbon footprint, and 80% of it is actually derived from secondary data. So generic data, and a big chunk of that generic data is linked to land conversion. And that land conversion data is today of very poor quality and not rich enough to empower decisions to stop deforestation in the supply chain. I want to get to a few definitions for those who are not fully familiar with the concept of land use change. So land use change is the term that is used under the Greenhouse Gas Protocol to define the conversion from one land use category to another. There's also a series of definitions from AFI, the Accountability Framework Initiative. So we just need to imagine different types of natural ecosystems, natural lands. It can be forests, it can be different types of grasslands, different types of wetlands. Whenever these are converted into cropland, we talk about land use change under the umbrella of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol is the framework, the foundational framework for defining the accounting rules that should apply when measuring carbon emissions from land use change. And it's the result of a very long the consensus building process. The latest version of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol with its annex called the Land Sector and Removals Guidance will be published by the end of this year, and it anchors a series of very important principles that pertain to land use change, carbon accounting, but also to land management, emissions accounting, and some other aspects like removals. This has the benefit of bringing standardization across stakeholders for land use change accounting, which was not the case in the past. This is why still today in different databases and different publications, you will find a variety of methods that are sometimes inconsistent. But now with the Greenhouse Gas Protocol to be published, it's all directionally going into some level of harmonization. From the carbon accounting space, this will percolate into the product accounting space. This is what is foreseen by Orbae. But it's really important to understand that it's a new topic that has been addressed the best possible way in the course of the last 10, 15 years in a very coarse way. And today, with the new rule sets in the land sector and removal guidance, there are new principles that can be applied, and this is the foundation for our work. So there's a very important element in land use change accounting. Land use change, as I said, is the transformation from a natural ecosystem to some type of cropland over a time window of 20 years. So it's about looking at a certain assessment year, say 2021 in this example. What is grown today in a particular plot of land? Is it cocoa? Is it soybean? Is it something else? And identify whether that particular plot of land was converted over the past 20 years, and if so, calculate the losses of carbon stock linked to that conversion from a natural ecosystem to a land that's managed by human beings. And there can be several land use change events in the course of 20 years. All of them need to be accounted for according to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. If there has been a conversion prior to these 20 years, then it's no longer counted as land use change. This is a convention. It's not a scientific fact. It's a convention that allows all of the players to talk the same language and to apply the same accounting rules, which is extremely important for comparability. Another very important element that was anchored in the Greenhouse Gas Protocol is the concept of carbon pools or carbon stocks. So when we chop down a forest or when we convert a natural grassland into a cropland, there is biomass that gets lost. In this biomass, there is carbon. So the Greenhouse Gas Protocol says that all of the carbon stocks need to be accounted for. It's divided into five main buckets. There's the above ground biomass, say the leaves, the branches, and so on of the tree. There's the below ground biomass, so the whole rooting system. There's the dead organic matter that has fallen on the floor, on the ground. There's the carbon, the organic carbon in the soil that has been mineralized, and there is the organic carbon in organic soils such as peatlands. All of this needs to be accounted for according to specific accounting rules. And that means all greenhouse gas emissions, not just CO2, also nitrous oxide, also methane. So these are the different elements of that equation. The third important element to understand how this works in practice is we look at a 20-year time window, but the emissions occurring at different points in time are not given the same weight. So there is what the Greenhouse Gas Protocol calls an emissions depreciation scheme. So historically, there were two different schemes that were developed and are still coexisting. What has been used for many years is equal discounting. That means for the past 20 years, each emission is given the same weight. So whether it's a recent deforestation, an older deforestation event, it gets 1/20. Each year is attributed 1/20th of the total emissions. And then appeared linear discounting, which attributes a higher weight, a higher importance to most recent deforestation events in contrast to older ones. And this is a way to help give accountability to recent deforestation and to companies or players that do not manage to get rid of deforestation in their supply chain by giving them more weight and more accountability in contrast to those that have eliminated deforestation in the supply chain for quite some years. In practice, what it means is that if you have land use change in your carbon inventory in a certain year, it's not because you have no deforestation the next year that you don't have land use change emissions. You still inherit of 20 years from the past. It's just that this time window moves with you, but progressively gets discounted. Now, an important concept that you will find in the greenhouse gas protocol is the distinction between statistical land use change and direct land use change. Statistical land use change is typically how this challenge has been addressed historically in LCA in different life cycle inventory databases for the past 10 years. It is grounded into statistical data, self-reported by countries, consolidated by the UN, that look at general patterns of contraction or expansion of different crops or different natural ecosystems, and an attribution of the contraction of the loss of natural ecosystems to the crops that have been expanding. So we're not at all looking at a direct attribution or direct correlation between certain crops expanding on natural ecosystems and their impact. It's this somewhat of an artificial allocation to all of the crops that have been expanding in the course of the last 20 years. The world of direct land use change has also been out there for quite some years, but historically it has been relying on tillage detection of specific plots and monitoring of land use over these plots and calculating greenhouse gas emissions on the farm level. And what the greenhouse gas protocol has defined is a novel way of addressing direct land use change that is based on crop classification and not just field delineation. And this is at the heart of what we do with Orbae. It is grounded into satellite imagery that classifies different land categories and classifies different crops at different points in time on high resolution. Jurisdictional direct land use change, this is how it's called, is equally valid as direct land use change on a farm level. It's the same principles, it's just with different data inputs. Well, we could go into further detail of nuance of what this means. So this S-luck on the left, this D-luck on the right, it's two different worlds. In principle, these should be avoided to blend them in a carbon footprint. And what we're focusing here today is really Orbae and its jurisdictional direct land use change and direct land use change based on high resolution crop classification. So this is what we've done. We're a young company, 3 years old, but this is where we've put our energy for the past 3 years after working on the topic of land use change for over 10 years. Tapping into satellite imagery, big data, in order to map virtually every single field on Earth. The goal of Orbae is to shed the light on land conversion of agriculture in general, across commodities, anywhere in the world, for any level of traceability and accounting for all types of land conversion. So it's a universal framework that looks at the history of the land and automates greenhouse gas emissions from land use change. It is an open data web app. Anyone can access it online. You will have a chance to test it in a minute. And it's an invitation for all of the stakeholders in the value chain, private, not-for-profit, public stakeholders, to actually use that data so that everybody can have the same benchmark values, can speak the same language, and can act together to stop land conversion in food supply chains. I'll go quickly about how it works, and we can come back to this in the FAQ if needed. But Orbae is grounded in Earth observation, satellite imagery, over different types of data that range from crop classification to forest cover to biomass stocks to soil properties. All of this on a resolution of 30 meters, at least, sometimes higher resolution than this, monitoring every single piece of land for the past 20 years and detecting any change of land use in the course of this 20-year time window, and directly correlating it with the expansion of specific crops in specific locations at specific points in time. So we do that systematically across commodities, across countries, started with soybean, then palm oil, then corn, and so on and so on. The real advantage of working on such high resolution and monitoring every single field is that the information on this high resolution pixel level can then later be aggregated to any spatial scale of interest in order to meet companies or other stakeholders what they know about the traceability in the supply chain. So a combination of pixels can be aggregated to the farm, to have a specific emission factor on the farm level, can be aggregated to sourcing region, can be aggregated to any municipality of state or country. And these last two are typically what we call jurisdictional direct land use change, because it's self-aggregated on jurisdictional level. In order to incorporate that into LCAs, because most people don't necessarily buy raw commodities as they exist at the farm gate, but rather buy processed commodities. Here in the example for corn, you will buy high fructose corn syrup, you will buy corn oil, you will buy cornmeal in a variety of forms. So what we are doing to facilitate the integration and the usage of the data is to translate all of the metrics and insights that we calculate on a commodity basis at the farm level into processed commodities, so that it's way easier to use in carbon accounting. We have made a very strong commitment to transparency. So all our methodology and data sources are documented in our methodology report that you can download. And we very much appreciate feedback from our partners and users in helping us identifying points that deserve further attention or further transparency. So where is Orbae today? Orbae is in the process of scaling very fast after starting with just a few commodities in a few countries. When we actually launched Orbae as an open data platform earlier this year in March, we could already cover 90% of palm and soy production in the world, 3/4 of soy, half of sugarcane, half of rapeseed, and already engaging into new supply chains, new commodities such as cocoa, coffee, cotton, beef, and others. And now we're in an effort of expanding that to new countries, new commodities, and it's really, this expansion is really informed by by priority set by the market. So please tell us, where is it that you see potential risks, that you would see higher value in getting more sugarcane data or more cotton or more wheat or more barley? We can look into all of this. We have a very long list of commodities and geographies where we know we can run the same analysis on the same resolution. The outcome of all of this is this. It's moving from a world where we had a very coarse emission factor for land use change on the country level that was a very, very rough approximation of the reality on the ground, to the most detailed nuances on jurisdictional level within countries. And all of this is available for free in Orbae, and Simon will give you a little tour and tease you a bit, see if you can find the information that is actually hiding behind all of this.
Well, thanks, Xavier, for the introduction, and also hi from my side, Simon. And let's jointly take a look at the platform. The beauty of it, it's open, and so feel free to log in. And we thought, instead of us giving kind of a demo tour on what the tool and the platform can do, what data you can find, just try it out and check it out yourself. So I think Tess dropped the link. If you have already logged in previously, you can directly click on login. If not, please sign up. You can create an account, and you will receive a magic link to your email, and then you can click on that, and like the web app opens. So I'll give you a few minutes just to sign up, log in, and get started.
So orbae.eco, for those who didn't get it.
And
This
it's
is the
also in
website.
chat.
It's also in the chat. Okay, good.
Exactly.
And it took me 1 minute to click on the link, sign up, and confirm my email. So everyone hopefully is having equal success.
Perfect. So we will still have a bit of time before the exercise starts, but the first thing you see is kind of this bubble chart for all the crops and countries we have insights on the platform. They're ranked on the commodity level You find information about the production volume, you find information about the total land use change emissions and the intensity factor there. And so the first exercise on the next slide is try to explore that bubble chart and try to respond to the question, where does rapeseed canola drive most / total emissions from grassland conversion? Is it Canada? Is it the United States? Or is it Australia? And I'll let you navigate. And whenever you think you nailed it, respond to the poll. And I see that the poll is already popping up here in a separate window. So once you know the answer, log it in, and then we'll see. Excellent. So let's reveal what the line share thinks the correct answer is.
Okay. Let me know when you can everyone see the results?
Yes, and it's a bit of a distribution. So Canada, US, and Australia, but a clear winner for Canada. And that's actually correct. Xavier, on the next slide, thanks. So there is like a bit of a multidimensional thing. So first of all, in Orbae, we surface emissions from forest, grassland, and wetland / peatland conversion, and you can click there on the grassland on the top, and you can select and rapeseed, and then you see which of those have the highest emission factor on the y-axis. But actually, what's important here, and the question was, is the total emission. So that's the bubble size, and that's Canada, slightly more than the US and Australia. So 60% of the participants were right. And let's move to number 2. And on the same bubble chart, navigate to Palm, Malaysia. And then the question there is that you can actually click on it and zoom in then on this country. And you get additional insights specific to that crop and that country. And when you look in the land use change emission tab, the question is, in which districts are the total land use change emissions from palm cultivation the highest? And we have again 3 different districts. And again, once you think you landed on the right answer, log it in, and then we'll see. And again, we see a bit of a distribution, but with a clear winner, Matu. And Xavier, if you click 1, we actually reveal that it's Muka. I'm not sure if I pronounce it correctly though. But here in the land use change emission tab, you can then actually navigate on the map. And again, you have like 3 indicators shown, which is the emission factor, and then the production volume and the total emissions. And basically the total emissions is the multiplication of the intensity with the production volume. So there is a correlation between those, and what we were looking for is really the total emissions. And you can then see all the smaller dots here on that parallel coordinates are districts, and we have a clear number 1, which is answer number B. Let's head to the third question. So for now, we only looked at land conversion emissions, but obviously there is also other emission related to crop production, related to the management of the land, so fertilizer emissions, also to peat occupation, to processing and transport. And we surface those emission factors in the all greenhouse gas emissions tab. And the question is, if you navigate there again for Palm, Malaysia, what are the flag emissions per kilogram of refined palm oil for a given state? Sarawak. Is it A, B, or is it C? Oh, there is getting a close race between the first two. And Xavier, yes, thanks. So actually, it's then the 10.36 kilograms, which was which questions if we can go back? Was it A, B, or C?
It was A.
It was A. Okay. So A was right. And maybe on the next slide, since it is a bit of a multi-click thing, I want just to highlight that you can, in the drop-down list on the top, you can go from the country view to the state view. And then you can select the state you're interested in. And then obviously you have these all emissions and you have the breakdown per different categories. And then if you click on the flag category only, then you get to the right number you're looking for. So feel free to further explore what's under the hood, what's on shelf. There is also other tabs on forest loss and many more exciting commodities. But I hope you enjoyed it and keep on enjoying, and then we look forward to your feedback. But maybe once now the data is available, and that's super cool because it's actually open and available to everyone. So what can you do with this? And I like to highlight just a few values you can unlock with those insights. And you can prioritize hotspots within portfolio, within product footprints. Then obviously data alone doesn't move the needle and insights. The actions are required. So it allows to take actions on the hotspots, action at scale. And then also there is a feedback when actions are taken to actually your performance so you can track progress over time. And uh, like starting with discovering the hotspots as highlighted by Xavier, the data currently used is typically very coarse and it's a hotspot. So land conversion emissions can dominate the overall footprint. And we have an issue if you have a hotspot and the data quality is not very accurate. So the chances are there that you set the priorities wrong, that certain aspects are missed. And so Orbae data can be used to prioritize and reassess whether actually hotspots are truly there and surface new ones. And so how you can do that is basically look at the list of purchased ingredients, get a list of volumes of which type of products, and then also information about the location. As you saw, we provide values on a country level, but if you have more granularity and you know it's from a certain region or a certain municipality, you can also then zoom in and use those emission factors directly. And on the land use change tab, on the previous slide, sorry, Xavier, there is also the land use change emission factor per kilogram of like palm fruit bunch, but we also provide a basic level of commoditization. So for direct derivatives, you can directly use the value here for crude palm oil or refined palm oil. And then again, like land use change emissions can dominate the carbon footprint, but depending on the crop and the country, you also have significant other emissions. For palm Malaysia and for soy Brazil, we do provide also to the open user insights on other types of emissions. There is also pro version where we do that consistently throughout the whole portfolio and commodities we have on the shelf. And we're also working on a flag database where we integrate Orbae values with existing generic database such as EcoInvent, AgriFootprint, etc. So that's upcoming. That's not available in the open version, but via Orbae Pro. And then once you've identified the hotspots, you've massaged in the data, then it's about taking actions. Time is ticking. We need to stop land conversion now. Also, monitoring and reducing the land footprint is contributing to avoiding further expansion into natural areas. And we also want to incentivize engagement in a landscape level, not just to zoom in on the value chain, but also on the broader context within a sourcing region or in a sourcing landscape. But if you look at the own value chain, it's still key to get traceability and engage with your supply chain and beyond. And why is that important? You can also see on the next slide that the average emission factor, for instance, for palm in Malaysia is around 1 kilogram per kilogram of fresh fruit punch. But the range is from 0 to 5, so a factor of 5. It's simply the uncertainty linked to you not knowing exactly where you source from. So what's the sourcing location can make a huge difference. And so zooming in there is material. Once you have potentially farm polygons or even traceability to a mill or to a farmer organization, etc., we can also compute those emission factors specifically for the supply chain on the next slide. So using farm polygons or the mill location with a certain radius, so we can compute the supply sheds or sourcing region D-log using exactly the same methodology. And that's also highlighted by Xavier already. So independent of the traceability level, like the same data and the same processing is used. And so there is consistency, even if you have farm level values or you just have traceability to the country level. And again, it's a bespoke service for supply chain, so that's also under the Orbae Pro package. And in your sourcing area, then actions to be taken is really in engaging in zero deforestation, action plans to take back degraded land into production, but then also improving yield and regenerative practices through various incentive schemes. There could also be the case, and that really depends on your sourcing strategy, but that you're not able to trace and engage with your supply chain. And that's on the next slide. Still, you can work on the sourcing policy. So to avoid sourcing from geographies near deforestation frontiers, so the less we source from deforestation frontiers, the less pressure is there. And then also moving to certified volume to indirectly stimulate sustainable agriculture can be a way in case traceability and supply chain engagement is not yet possible. And then there is also the tool called the What If, and the name is program. So it's a simulator of what if my value chain would be deforestation free or deforestation free since a given cutoff date, or if I would shift sourcing, etc. How would my emission profile evolve over time? So projecting into the future. And that can help, seeing, okay, bridging action plans into projected emissions into the future to actually build your roadmap, maybe in the context of the SBTi flag or in any carbon reduction roadmap. And as Xavier mentioned, there is like this 20-year legacy. So if you move from today some deforestation to zero deforestation, it will take time that the land use change emission will phase out from your inventory. And that's also baked in that simulation. And yeah, then actions are taken, progress can be tracked, and so Orbae can really unlock the whole series from prioritizing the hotspots, taking actions where it's needed, and then tracking progress. And maybe a final word from our side, it's that we really built Orbae and we launched it to the open to have this common language and not behind the paywall, because we really need to move the needle right now to have this data available and accessible to address land conversion in food supply chain through this collective action, and that's our contribution to it. So it's open, it's transparent, and science-based. And I really hope it unlocks value for all of you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. That was excellent. And we have quite a few questions and 14 minutes. So why don't we get started? I'm going to start from earlier in the presentation. So the first question is from an anonymous attendee that wrote in, so any LUC within the last 20 years needs to be accounted for, but I understand temporary carbon storage less than 100 years is not allowed to be counted, question mark. Isn't this a bit counterintuitive? It seems like bioproducts are disadvantaged in these accounting frameworks.
Yes, that's actually a very good question, and one which has been hotly discussed over the past years in the context of the greenhouse gas protocol, land sector and removal guidance. So we really focus on surfacing emissions caused by land use change. So moving from natural ecosystem into crop production, and we surface them independently, of being a bio-based product. So I think also for biofuels, it's relevant to surface those types of emissions, or if it's used for food product. And so it needs to be accounted for. And then indeed on the temporary carbon storage, it can be reported separately outside of the scope. That has been a decision, I think, from the greenhouse gas protocol, and it can create some disadvantages for bio-based products. I think not so much for biofuels, but especially when you have let's say more on the pulp and paper side of things, or like let's say storage and the product lifetime of several decades, etc. Because until you have the emissions again, so indeed that can create some disadvantages. It's not what we focus on.
Thank you. The next question is asking how different Orbae is from another tool, BRLUC or BR-LUC, developed by the Embrapa for Brazil. Can you estimate how different the results would be comparing both tools? And this tool also uses satellite images to define land use.
Yeah, it's actually interesting. Thanks, everyone, for asking that question. We have a partnership with Embrapa, and our approaches are very similar in that regard. So the Brazil Look tool is focused on Brazil only, while we look at global coverage. But the underlying approach is quite similar. There are some nuances to it in terms of distribution over time, in terms of which data layers are used. In Brazil Look, they also consider the carbon uptake from the crop, which can lead to a removal or negative emissions sometimes, which is not accounted for in Orbae. So there are some nuances. And we have the vision to harmonize both approaches. So all in all, it's similar, and Orbae is more the global coverage, and Brazil is kind of zooming in. Yeah.
Next question is, for any pixel of satellite land image, how does Orbae know which crop is growing in that pixel?
Do you want to
Should I
take
take
that
that
one?
one?
Yeah.
Yeah. So crop classification is a whole science in itself. We're not doing that ourselves. the very possibility of building Orbae was grounded on the abundance of new high-resolution data for crop classification that landed on the public domain over the past years, from research institutes, from international consortia, from national agencies, and sometimes also from private data providers. So it's a whole science. It basically looks at not only the spectral response of a certain crop at a certain point in time, but essentially looks at the time dynamics of the crop growth, depending on where it's grown, and linking that to cropping calendars. So it's really interesting, but that means you do not detect wheat in the same way in Australia or in the US or in northern US and eastern US because the calendars are different. And all of these so-called crop masks that are on public domain come with particular uncertainty assessment when it comes to the accuracy metrics. Most of the crop masks we use have over 80% accuracy, sometimes over 90%, sometimes a bit lower, and we are very transparent about this in our own methodology to acknowledge for certain limitations in some instances. And there's more and more of these data landing on public domain, peer-reviewed, and this is really exciting.
Thank you. The next question is how can we integrate the land use change emission factors from Orbae into commercial databases? So, should we add the emission factor manually, or is there an automated solution?
Yeah, so today you would have to do this manually by removing the land use change model from this database and plugging in like a land transformation CO2 from land transformation flow to air. But we are actively engaging now with the main LCI database providers to explore how we can integrate in a systematic way our data into their framework. So if you are a bit patient, it could be that it comes in the course of the next year.
That is exciting. The next question is how do the satellite observed conversions that are detected across the globe get validated and fairly accounted for? So, for example, what does the validation approach to your detection look like, and what are the general performance values and emission commission percentages look like?
So I think I spoke a bit about this earlier. We are not a remote sensing company, and we're not producing these data layers ourselves. We are leveraging data on public domain that has been peer-reviewed. Like any peer-reviewed data, it comes with certain limitations. And all of these limitations we replicate in our own methodology, in our own documentation. So you can witness that. It's also reflected in our data quality assessment. The way it's done, it depends on the crop. It depends on the technology that's used. It's not the same thing to detect palm plantations as detecting arable crops. It's different techniques. Typically the omission and commission errors are systematically documented.
Great. Now, I'm not sure if this next one is what you answered a little bit, so I'll read it and then you can let me know. So, how does the model confirm the land use change is due to a specific crop, and what sort of verification is applied to the imaging?
Yeah, so it's about the same. So it's a direct overlay of a certain crop being detected in a certain piece of land in a given assessment year and rebuilding the history of that same piece of land. So either there's an overlay or there is no overlay in that sense. So either the detection in the first place is correct and the land use change is correct, is accurate, or it's not, it's part of that 5, 10, 15% error. And in that case, then it's erroneous on the pixel level. The interesting thing is the moment you start aggregating pixels to the jurisdictional level, these errors, they tend to level out. And so the values that you will find in Orbae on national and some national level are maybe not more accurate, but probably a better representation than the values that we compute on our end, pixel per pixel.
Thank you. Can you please talk about the validation of the land use change emission results estimated by Orbae?
Yeah. So there's several steps in the validation. First, there's the whole exercise of curation and harmonization of the input data. So all of these different data for forest cover, for biomass stocks, for crop classification, they were developed under different umbrellas for different purposes. So there's a whole work to harmonize this so that we can effectively overlay them without creating errors in terms of projections, in terms of resolution, and some other parameters. That's the first step. Then there's the first step in terms of running the computation. Of course, there's a series of automated checks that there isn't a bug in the calculation procedures, that they're systematically aligned with the accounting principles of the greenhouse gas protocol. And once we have the results, we systematically benchmark them against statistical land use change results that are available in databases on public domain. We compare the calculated production volume and harvested areas to those that are reported by the different countries in their official statistics. And we compare whenever needed and whenever possible to scientific publications that sometimes are, if they're recent and they reflect like a recent knowledge over a certain crop in a particular region, then we look at this, which sometimes is very important for elements like emissions from peat. We had to verify that emissions from peat were actually demonstrated in certain parts of China, certain parts of the US. So this is part of the validation process.
Thank
And
you.
maybe I'd like to add that all the data layers and data points and sources are also documented transparently on each CCC page or crop country page. So besides the general methodology, there is also dataset specific description. And then obviously, let's say the certainty or accuracy of the results also depends a bit on the crop and the country. So for instance, for cocoa, which might be grown under kind of in an agroforestry system, the detection between a forest and cocoa system is harder than like a monoculture soy field versus a forest, etc. So it's also crop specific, the validity of the certainty of the results.
Excellent. So I know we talked about the Brazil tool. The next question is asking, do you know how the results from Orbae compare with these types of tools that are more country specific?
It can really go in both directions. So it could be lower or it could be higher. What we see, for instance, for sugarcane Brazil, it's typically grown in areas where you had kind of for a long time already sugarcane cultivation, no huge expansion into forests. But in Brazil, where you have a lot of expansion into forests, so if you just take a country deforestation rate and allocate it to all the crops grown there, and that's what happened in the past. So sugarcane Brazil was really high emission, but actually it doesn't directly cause, maybe indirectly causes deforestation, but not directly. And so the results can be really different. And maybe talking about sugarcane for the US, in Florida, there are quite some peat emissions linked to it. They have been neglected so far. And so our values are much higher simply because it was unknown before. And so it can really go in both directions.
So we have 1 minute. The option is we can answer all the questions and hang out a little longer if you're both free. If not, I would encourage you to maybe, is that fine? Or we can pick a question and end there.
Well, there aren't so many, so let's take them.
Okay, great. I'm really excited about this question. Do you consider only CO2 or other impact indicators?
Yeah, that's a good one. So we started with carbon. There is quite a need, but we have a lot of data points beneath. So we know hectares of land converted. We can also surface them or are surfacing them. Peat conversion areas, grassland conversion areas. We also provide indicators about land occupation, so square meters occupied per year, which is also be required by the greenhouse gas protocol as a land tracking metric. And we're working on a series of additional indicators on water and biodiversity, fully acknowledging that taking decision just from a carbon lens might lead to unintended trade-offs. And so our ambition is really looking more broadly on nature-related risks and impacts, not just carbon. So stay tuned, more to come.
Great. This question is from Lisa. Awesome tool, thank you. Are there organizations that can help with supporting a supply chain with the efforts you suggest, such as increasing yield and regenerative agriculture?
That's a good one. Sure, there are organizations who could help us. One critical element in our calculation indeed is yield, for instance. In the absence of globally monitored high-resolution yield or yield estimates, we use statistics to convert basically the land use change emissions on an area basis to land use emissions on a volume basis. These statistics are typically reported by national agencies on national or subnational level. And indeed, when we are working specifically with a client in a particular supply chain, and they know they're sourcing from a particular region and that they've been working into improving yields through a variety of region ag practices, for instance, then we can plug in basically any yield as long as it can be backed by some evidence.
The next question is from Joel. Are the resulting DLUC, is that how, or DLUC, is that how you pronounce that, or
Yeah,
DLUC? Great.
DLUC.
DLUC, emission factors directly suitable to combine with either eco-invent or agri-footprint-based LCA models?
So yes, they are. They can very well just replace the statistical land use change models that are blended into agri-footprint or eco-invent. And again, as said earlier, we're talking with these groups to see the feasibility of integrating our data in some of their next updates.
Excellent. We have 4 more questions. The next one is, given that crop rotation happens often here in Canada, thinking of rapeseed, how would you apply or attribute luck to each crop for the same plot of land?
Simon, want to take? Oh, I can answer. So the way the greenhouse gas protocol sets the accounting rule, it's you define an assessment year and you look at the crop in that assessment year. Whether this is part of a multi-annual rotation, somehow it doesn't matter. You get attributed the land use change for that plot of land for the crop that is grown in this assessment year. The next year, it will rotate. It will be another crop, but then the field that was cultivated with canola that year and the next year, it's gonna be wheat and maybe there's gonna be canola in the neighboring field. This is the rule. Then actually in practice you could apply allocation rules, but this is not recommended under the greenhouse gas protocol because there's a level of complexity there and uncertainty on the data that is not easily scalable. So this is how we handle it today.
How can we use Orbae for countries not listed? Can we use weighted average for all the other countries for emission factors?
Yeah, that's also something we're looking into. So we're creating a global data set, and we do that whenever we have a large share of the global production already covered with existing countries. We're also looking into establishing regional emission factors, so for Europe or Latin America, based on the information we have at hand. So typically we do that based on a production weighted average, so considering the production volumes of those countries to build kind of regional or global weighted emission factors.
Okay, there's a few questions in this next one. So first, it was a congratulations on the platform, and they are excited to check in on it after this call. Do we need a password? Which, yes, right? We had to sign up and create an account.
But there's no password. You'll just get a magic link, and this link will remain active for I don't know how long, some months before you need that. As long as if you log in regularly, then you won't need a new link.
Awesome. And the kind of sourcing data, how is that data updated?
The kind of sourcing data.
And some more
So
context They saw the Amazon area has been mentioned, and
Mm.
there are strategic issues regarding illicits such as illegal logging and mining and the risk of water contamination or water stress.
So I can just answer on the sourcing of the data and the frequency of updates. We have calculated land use change emissions for certain crops for multiple assessment years, basically moving that time window and looking at updated forest loss data and crop classification. The year-to-year variations on jurisdictional level are very low. They can be high on farm level, but they're on a set of farms, but on jurisdictional level they're low. So we do not intend to recompute on an annual basis because it's unnecessary. And we will certainly recompute most of our data in the course of 2026 once there are more methodological improvements and some more data on public domain for some of the ingredients that are baked in the equation.
Excellent. Okay.
And on the other elements, water contamination, water stress, some of and illicit deforestation. There are some of these elements that we do address. They're not in Orbae. They're part of our deforestation risk assessment and water risk assessment services. I think we need to take that conversation separately. These are kind of one-off analysis that are not automated and scaled across the globe at this point in time.
Thank you. We are on to our last question. Thank you everyone for your extra minutes. How do we use product EFs for other countries not listed? We already answered this one, right? Or is this another, do we take the weighted average?
I think it's the same.
Oh,
It's the one, yeah.
okay. Well, thank you again for your extra time. What a lovely presentation. And we had a lot of engagement. So I think everyone, like me, is very excited about this tool and your talk. So your contact information was on your slides, which will be available soon. We'll be posting the video on our YouTube. So if you missed anything or want to go reference anything, you can check that out. You all have the Orbae link now. So I think we're all set to go. Thank you, Simon and Xavier, for a great talk.
Thank you, Tess. Thank you
Thanks
all.
for hosting us and thanks for joining. Have a good one.
Yep. Have a great day. Bye.